In this tutorial, we'll go into more detail about rendering images and animations. In the previous videos, we've discussed how to create and texture objects, set the scene, and create simple animations. In this video, we'll cover using cameras and generating final quality images, a process referred to as rendering. Renderings are separate from your model and can be saved for use in other projects and presentations. Renderings can be generated from any view of the model using the rendering tool or the rendering menu command. You can always preview your rendering using the LiveRay View Display method. Views can include modeling windows and views based on camera objects. Like other objects that you can draw into your scene, cameras are inserted using a tool from the tool palette. Cameras draw in just like the spotlights that we covered earlier in the lighting video. You can drop a camera onto the active grid with a single click, or you can click and drag to establish the initial view direction of the camera. There are many ways to move a camera and change its look-at point, including using other objects as targets that the camera will follow. You can target a named object using the object properties for the camera, or you can just drag the look-at point onto an object. You can open the camera window by double-clicking the camera icon, and use the special window controls to change the camera's position and view angle. You'll find a number of additional options for camera objects in the Object Properties palette. You can change the type of camera from a normal camera to stereo for creating stereoscopic pairs for 3D vision effects, and other special camera types like panorama, cubic, fisheye, and spherical. You can set up effects like depth of field, which can make objects that are close to the camera be in focus, while objects that are further away be out of focus. And motion blur, which causes objects that are moving at a higher relative speed to become blurred. Cameras can also be animated like other objects. Review the Animation Basics video and the user guide for more information about animation. Once you have the view set up that you want to create a rendering from, you can generate a rendering using the rendering tool. A single click will start a rendering at the same size as the view you click in. You can also click and drag to start a rendering from the view that is a different size and/or proportion. The marquee you drag can be contained within the view, or you can even drag beyond the window. If you click and hold on the rendering tool icon, you can get access to pre-saved settings, such as one of these Raydiosity settings. You can get even more control by accessing the Render Image dialog. This can be done in several ways. You can choose Render Image from the rendering menu, which will use the active view as the starting point for a rendering. A shortcut for this command is to hold down the Shift key and click or drag in the view you want to generate a rendering from. The Render Image dialog gives you full access to all of the power of Strata's rendering engine. In the upper left here, you can change the rendering method used. These include the OpenGL polygon-based renderers and the raycast-based renderers. OpenGL renderers have many options, including the toon renderers. They are polygon-based and start with the surface, while raycast-based rendering follows the rays cast by light sources. If you have Raydiosity enabled, those light rays are allowed to bounce around the scene to produce an even more realistic lighting effect. Next are the custom controls for various areas of rendering. You can use the sliders to make a quick adjustment to the quality level in any of these areas, or you can click on the drawer control on the left side to get full access to all of the features for that section. The Details section provides controls for making sure fine details are captured and for smoothing out edges. If I open the drawer for the Details section, I can adjust things like the oversampling, select an anti-alias filter, and change the values used for finding detail. The Lighting section lets you alter values for radiant illumination, which is the essence of the Raydiosity rendering engine. These values adjust how light bounces in the scene beyond what a light source directly shines on. The Caustics Photons area can be used when your scene has spot and point lights that are set up to use photons. Photons allow you to produce caustic effects, such as focused light through a lens. The volume sampling is used when point and spotlights are shining through volume effects, like fog and mist. The Shadows section lets you adjust whether shadows are cast on surfaces, if soft shadows are calculated, and if shadows show in volumes, and what the quality of those shadows will be. The Transparency section lets you adjust how many layers the renderer will look through to generate transparent surfaces and what the quality of a blurry transparency will be. That's if you have the option enabled in a texture with transparency. Similar to the transparency section, the reflection section lets you determine how many reflective surfaces the renderer will follow to resolve the image. You can also adjust the quality of blurry reflections if you have a reflective texture with that option enabled. Below the slider sections are controls for rendering an alpha channel and layers. If you choose to render to layers, you can produce the individual components of the image. These can be used later in a compositing program like Adobe Photoshop to do custom editing to your image. Next down, you'll find settings for custom cameras and other specialized controls, including the new gamma settings. Look for more on gamma settings in the What's New section. The Save Settings button saves the current settings so that you can use them with the rendering tool pop-up and from this dialog. On the top right of the dialog, you can get access to your saved settings and the same settings available from the rendering tool. The preview area gives you an idea of how your current rendering settings will affect your renderings. You can use the Preview Scene pop-up menu to change from one of the standard preview scenes, or you can use the view you selected to render. The bottom area lets you adjust the size and range of your rendering. You can change the units to anything from default pixels to meters, or even use a percentage of the view you have selected. You can use one of the preset sizes instead of the view area you previously selected by using the Size menu. If you've set up an animation, you can select which frames to render, and by selecting the Remember Size and Frame Selection checkbox, each time you use the rendering tool in a view, these size settings will be used. Lastly, these buttons across the bottom allow you to suspend a rendering to render later or possibly on another machine. Clicking Done will close the dialog without starting a rendering, but will maintain any changes you've made, so the next time you use the rendering tool, these settings will apply. Cancel closes the dialog without retaining the settings. And of course, the Render button will start a rendering using the settings you've created. Like the other videos in this series, we've only been able to touch on this subject in the amount of time we have available. There's much more you can learn about rendering by reading the user guide or watching some of the more in-depth videos on the Strata 3D University. In a nutshell, rendering is all about taking the creative work you've put into setting up your scene and generating pixels. The Strata rendering engine provides a high level of control to allow you the creative freedom to get just the look you want. Presets are a good place to start, but once you decide to dive into all of the options available in the rendering dialog, you can make the final image just what you're looking for.